Okay. All right. Welcome back. So we were looking at the attitudes of a counselor for a good counseling relationship. What was the first attitude? Empathy. Second is unconditional positive regard. And the third we were looking at was genuineness. Okay. So what is actually genuineness, as I was saying? If you look at the screen here, it's to do as I say and not as I do. You see that very often, maybe as parents, you only do what I say, don't do what I do. Is that genuine? It isn't, right? And the counselor is a model to that. So whenever the counselor comes with that attitude of wanting to be the same with your inner feelings, just like you are on the outside, it really helps. So when you are not genuine, it's coming from some reason within. It's coming maybe to hide. It's coming to probably portray yourself as somebody, something. So it's coming from a certain defensive reason. And that's why in counseling, it is always, you will catch that. If you're not genuine, your counselee will pick that up. Okay? Like, for example, even when you are trying to understand someone and you're coming to that place of really not feeling with them, they catch that. All right? And so that's why it's so important to be in a place of empathy so that you can genuinely experience what they are going through. Okay, so let's quickly take some examples. The second one, a client is sharing her anger towards her husband, but the incidents that she is recalling seems disproportionate to the anger she is expressing. So the counselor is sharing something, but what she's expressing and what she has shared seems to be disproportionate. Like, let's say she's saying, my husband beat me up, black and blue, right? But when she's expressing it, she's probably laughing and saying it. So you do understand that there's something wrong, isn't it? That the extent of what she's feeling is not what she's expressing. So genuineness is actually to catch that and say, for example, I noticed that your situation seemed very, very serious. But even as you're expressing it, it does show me a different emotion. Can you tell me what is it that's happening? So I'm not able to see why that incongruence is there. And so I am actually expressing it because I didn't understand, and I'm actually expressing it as a counselor, right? So then the counselee does know that I am modeling that sense of genuineness and congruence to my counselee so that they could also, in turn, be the same with me. All right? Sometimes, yes?
Sometimes some people could be, they hide their emotions or feelings behind just laughing it, but
right.
Internally they might really be crying, but there's some people just don't show the emotions completely.
Right. Yeah. So what is the aim in counseling is also, it's not just to resolve problems, but also to get in touch and understand what is happening within. So even as a person, as you said, they may be hiding their feelings, you're actually building an opportunity for them to be open with some of those feelings that they tend to hide away from. Because if you're not getting them to a place of coming in tune with their emotions, you're not bringing them to a place of actively wanting to change a situation. Because they will continue doing that on the outside world, which may not be helpful, right? So that's what you are bringing up in the forefront so that they recognize it themselves, that it's important to be genuine both in what I'm feeling inside and how I may be exhibiting it out, because that could be the catalyst for change. All right? I hope I answered your question.
Yes, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, great. Right? So as we're looking at these attitudes, these three attitudes are of utmost importance. Okay, so just to quickly, just consolidate what we were saying. Whoever comes to us, every individual that comes to us, we treat them with that dignity, with that worth. And that's why whenever we are in a relationship, in a counseling relationship, these three things really matter: empathy, positive regard, as well as genuineness, so that they could come to a place of change, come to a place of looking to God for that sense of healing. And you as a counselor are part and instrument of that journey. Okay? All right? Okay. Any questions here before we move into the next chapter?
Generic question on counseling.
Yeah.
To be honest, these actually help in our current interpersonal relationships.
Yes.
Like, how do we address it's
Yeah.
given a different perspective.
Correct.
But when we are genuinely involved in counseling, do we actually go with the flow, or do we go more of this type of a systematic approach? It shouldn't be like like a bookish thing, like whatever the approach is, and my question is like, okay, this is what I learned, this is what I will say. I understand. Or will that be a little more dramatic, or will I feel content giving that counseling, or how do you bridge that gap, man?
Okay, so when we're talking about theoretical knowledge, so let's look at an approach. Okay, when we're looking at some approaches of counseling, or there may be some 5 steps of how you can do that approach, that becomes very theoretical. But the state of mind or being that you are going to be going in as a counselor definitely should have this. You should feel, you should be empathetic. These characteristics are very, very important in order for just the counselee to even not forget counseling, even in an interpersonal relationship, to be someone who is in a place to help others. These characteristics are very, very important. Right? Like, it's not that, okay, I should remember to be empathetic. No, it should come as a state of mind of being empathetic. And that's why I said it's a skill. You can always build that up. Okay. Okay, we're in the next chapter, which is on chapter 4. Chapter 4, and we're on page 18. All right, chapter 4, page 18. And what we're going to look at right now is the counseling process. Okay, so what we just covered in the first hour was the therapeutic or the counseling relationship, how the attitudes of the counselor is very important. We spoke about empathy, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness. These were the things that we covered in the previous chapter. Okay, so we're just going to look at the next. We were looking at what is the counseling relationship. Now, what is the process? How do you get to start, or what do you do in counseling? Okay, now this is what we are going to be looking at. How do we get into the process of counseling? So the role of a counselor is very important in the process of counseling. The role of a counselor is not an advisor. It's not I know it all, you come to me, I'm the doctor, you are the patient, I'll tell you what to do. The role of the counselor is a facilitator. What does a facilitator mean? What is a facilitator? Okay, all right. Okay, so think of a facilitator like a matchstick. How do you burn your stove? You need fire, right? You can't create fire there. But you use a matchstick to take the fire to the... Can the matchstick in itself get fire? No, you have to ignite it in order to get fire. But then it has a property. So similarly, you as a counselor are a facilitator. You're the one who's bringing about understanding, change in your counseling. So you're like, I mean, it's a very sad example, but still what I'm trying to help you see is that facilitation, right? That it's only through that you can get this done. So the counselor is a facilitator. The counselor is also someone who should be able to initiate and reinforce some action point to the counseling. That does not mean you are the one who is telling them what to do, but you're initiating that thinking process, that conversation towards an action point. And you are someone who's going to help someone to help themselves. Okay? So if you need to, I mean, there's that proverb that says, no, don't teach a man, if you want someone to continue thriving, you should teach them how to fish, not give them a fish every day, right? Teach them how to fish so that they can do it on themselves, rather than you coming and going and fishing and giving it to them every day. So teach them how to fish. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that old first example we spoke about. Susan, you remember our Susan? Remember, no? Okay. So again, then just reading Susan's example. What is Susan saying? I don't know what's wrong with my husband. So he just doesn't allow me enough space to just be me. Sorry, I got off I'm sorry. Okay. So Susan saying, I don't know what's wrong with my husband. He doesn't allow me enough space to be me. He always wants to pry into what I'm doing, who I'm talking to. I'm having quite enough. I have second thoughts about this marriage. All right? Okay. So remember, you all had written some answers long back. Yeah? You have it with you? Or it's gone to the dustbin? Gone, you have it with you. Okay. So would you like to share with me what did you write then? Or if you want, you can write it again now. Okay. So what is your first response to Susan? Quickly write, all of you. Quickly write down what would your first response be to Susan. Done? Okay. May I hear some responses? I understand what you're going through. Okay, that's become a common sentence to just say, I understand what you're going through. What is it, Diksha? No. I'm asking you, you said you understand what you're going through. And I say, ma'am, what did you understand? Very good. That's what you should be saying, right? Rather than I understand, you communicate what that understanding. Okay, you're looking hopeless. All right. What else would you say? I can see the struggle you're facing. Excellent. Asapu, what did you write? Right. Come on. Vimal? Don't fear. Online students?
I would say, like, yes, you definitely must feel very stressed, but can you please explain a little more about the situation?
Okay, so it looks like you're really stressed, but could you explain more? Okay, now very often, I want you to rate what your responses were. So, John, you said that, right? You seem very hopeless. Oh, you said hopeless. Okay. So, is it effective? It's somewhat effective or ineffective? Vimal, you said do not fear. Effective, somewhat effective, ineffective. Somewhat effective. John, your response? Somewhat effective. Best to be in the middle, no? Natasha, what would you say about your response? Effective, somewhat effective, ineffective?
I think she will feel she is being understood.
Okay, she feels she's understood. Okay, so generally, these are your common responses if you look at it. The first thing generally we say is, what made you feel this way? Is it an effective response? Huh? It's a question, right? So it's a very neutral thing. It's not maybe effective, neither is it ineffective. It's neutral. Okay, why do you quarrel like that? You must be patient with him and love him. Is it effective, ineffective, somewhat effective? Why is it effective?
That will be judgmental.
It's judgment. Okay? Okay. Tell me, were you really in love when you got married? It's again like a judgment. You are placing a bias, a question. Yeah, so it's ineffective. Maybe you should try other ways like making his favorite dish to please him.
It's a temporary fix.
Yeah. Totally ineffective, right? Okay. You are saying that your marriage is not going well and your relationship with your husband has deteriorated. He does not seem to appreciate anything you do. You are doing the best you know, but without success in satisfying him. Effective, somewhat effective, not effective. Okay, it's somewhat effective. Why is it somewhat effective? Because if you notice, this counselor has only reworded what she said. Yeah, just reworded, paraphrased what she said. There is no inference of what the person is feeling. Nowhere it's written there. Right? Okay, the last one. You feel hurt because your husband is disappointed in you. It's an effective one. Why? Because you have picked on the emotion that the person is saying. All right. So that brings us to, what is it that brings change in a person? How do we bring about a counselee from talking about their problem to a place of coming to change? Okay, that's the goal, right? So in order for that to happen, we must display those attitudes we spoke about earlier in our last class. That's very important. This is just not one time, but then throughout your counseling session, those three attitudes are like the bedrock of your relationship with the counseling. All right? But they go through something called as the learning process. The learning process is, in short, it's called EUA. And so what is that? The first thing that you want to do, so your attitudes, which we spoke about, those three attitudes actually facilitate this process. When you are empathetic, when you show unconditional positive regard, when you're genuine, it begins to help them move into this process of counseling. So what is this process of counseling? Three things. The first one is that they explore what is going wrong. And that's where some of your questions come about. Susan, you seem extremely hopeless, or you are very dejected at what's happening. Can you help me share more? So what are you doing? You've reached the feeling and then you're trying to explore more. But if you were to give her an answer, you should just forgive him, be kind and just, adjust with him. Have you given any room for exploration on the problem? Have you given a room for exploration? No, because you've already said something, you've given a statement, and your counseling is over within 2 statements. Right? But how do you want them? They should be exploring, not you're helping, you're facilitating. Remember, when you're asking questions to understand about Susan and her marriage, this is not just for you. It's also for her. Because as she is talking about her problem, she's beginning to understand it herself. Did you hear me? as Susan is talking about her problem and exploring what she's going on in her marriage, she is also understanding a lot about her problem. She's picking up certain characteristics, certain insights about her problem as well. But that can be done only when you facilitate those emotions. I'm connecting with her on that emotional level so that she can look at her problem in a much better space. So what is the process? Is to explore what is going on. And this self-exploration, self-understanding is for your counselee more than it is for you. But yes, you do get information, but you're also helping them to explore it themselves. Okay? All right? From self-exploration, you are moving them to a place of understanding. So I can demonstrate this for you if someone can come to me with a problem. Any problem, any small problem. Anybody wants to try? So that I'll show you how we move from exploring into understanding. Okay? Any small problem, even those who are online can come. So I could help to show you how that happens. Any small problem. Diksha? Anybody else? I don't want to force anyone. You should come willingly. You'll go on? Okay. All right. So Akhil, hi.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going straight to the point. Okay, I'm not getting into things. So Akhil, thank you for coming. Thank you for being willing to share something. What is it that you'd like to share with me?
Ma'am, it's my concern on my marriage relationship.
Okay.
And it's been more than 3 years. My wife has left me. So I'm just hoping to find a way out. We've tried everything, but it's a complete closed chapter. What would you recommend?
So Akhil, I hear that it's 3 years since
she's left.
Your wife has left you.
Yes.
And you must have gone through significant emotions through these 3 years.
Absolutely, ma'am.
And I'm trying to right now understand, how are you feeling about what's happened in the last 3 years?
We've tried a lot. We've approached a lot of counselors, pastors and things. But since there has been no concrete solution, it's almost dead.
Okay.
So
I sense that you feel quite hopeless about this relationship, about where it's going to go.
Absolutely, ma'am.
What does that mean to you?
I feel it'll be better to move out rather than to keep holding on to this pain for a longer run.
Okay. Akhil, thank you for sharing that. But I just want to help to... So what happened here? He said about his problem. How did I empathize? Did I empathize? Did I empathize? Okay. So how did I empathize? So I said it's been a long process. It must be... you sound as if you feel very hopeless about this relationship, right? And he said, absolutely. I said, what does this mean to you? So what is he's begun to explore that, okay, it's been 3 years. This is what it has been. Now, rather than sticking to the pain, I need to figure something out. So what's happening over here? There was an exploration. I'm trying to figure out what is on his mind, right? And he's begun to understand, that's moved in, that this has gone too far. It's been 3 years. There's no point working on it. I must figure a way to move out. You saw that? All right. So this is very brief, but then it can keep going on to help. Okay, so maybe we'll go a little bit. So what I hear you saying is, you think it's better to really end this emotional state that you are in and figure out the way forward. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay. So when you're looking at the way forward, how does that look to you? What would you like to see when you're saying a way forward? What would you like to see?
To have a more concrete and a closure, so there is clarity in the mind rather than just hanging without any hope, because it's almost done and dusted.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is a concrete, clear closure to this, so that you can heal from it and move on. Okay. All right. Now even as you're saying that, I'm sure it's a painful thing for you to even imagine that this has to come to a closure and it has to come to an end. Does that sound like that?
Yes, very much, because I've waited enough.
Okay. How have you coped in the last 3 years, even as you've waited?
I have actually waited on the Lord more than the person.
Okay.
And we've tried our best reaching out to the people who were involved in our marriage.
Okay.
And since there has been no conversation or no communication from the other end,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't see any further.
So I see that
Yes.
you've done many things, or the best that you can, to try and attempt to work this out, but then you're not seeing any way forward, and that's why you've come to this place of that you need to have this closure.
Yes,
right?
because there has been no response.
There has been no response from her. Okay. So this closure,
Mm.
if you were to have this closure, how would you know that you've reached that closure?
At least I will have some clarity that, I can at least move forward in life rather than just holding on to something which is where I'm not being valued in any way.
Okay. So this moving forward, when you
Mm.
said, I want to move forward, have clarity about my future, if there were one or two things that you would like to do that will help you seek that clarity or know that you have reached clarity, what would those one or two things be? Saying that, okay, I've reached that, I've got that clarity. What would those one or two things be?
One of them is definitely I've tried my best. And the second thing, I waited more than I possibly thought I would.
So it's a thought process that you want to begin to see it differently, saying that you've done your best, you've put in a lot of work on this. So just to, when you have that in your mind, you feel that there is some clarity that you've received?
Yes, and I've waited a lot. So much of time that has passed.
So much. Okay. What would clarity look like for you in your next step in your future?
Clarity at this point of time that the old relationship is actually gone, and there is no point in simply waiting on the past and the present.
Mhm.
On the future, seek God for a new open door after this is completely closed.
Okay, to seek for a new open
Open
door.
door.
Does that
Yes.
bring you some kind of hope?
Yes, because as a God is a God of second opportunities when things have not really worked in your favor.
Mm. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not taking this further, okay? But thank you so much for sharing. My request is, especially when we are having these kind of conversations, when someone is opening this up, please keep whatever we are learning within the room, okay? We don't talk about any of this outside, but thank you so much, Akhil. All right. So what did you see after he reached that understanding that, okay, 3 years, I've worked on things, I've tried so many things. What is his action point that he figured that he should do? What is the action point he had? Yes. So you said, I think someone's responded something. Yes, clarity on closure. That's what you said. You said, I want to have clarity about how to come to closure. So then I asked you, how would you know that closure? You said, some change in my thoughts. What is it that I have tried my best? I have waited and now I must move on. So you just actually expressed saying that the action point is to think that way so that you can help move forward. We didn't go to other details, but did you all get that? Right? So through just, I didn't give him any suggestions, right? I was just sticking with what he was saying, helping him to really experience what he's feeling and put the questions in such a way that he would think ahead. All right? And that's why this place, when you are in that place of empathy or place of unconditional positive regard, when you catch to the feeling, you are helping them to really explore that, okay, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking towards. Okay? All right? Fair? All right. So let's move forward.
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
So my scenario was little like an extreme end.
Hmm.
Okay, where it's like too much of waiting and too much. Now take a scenario of Susan's example that we've shared.
Yeah.
It is like a initial
Correct.
stage.
Correct.
So as a counselor, would you directly or indirectly try to tell Susan to just hold on? It's too quick to press the button to look outside the marriage?
No, I wouldn't suggest that. Neither will I suggest anything. Now, for Susan's case, see, I know, Akhil, for you have been thinking and mulling over this for the last 3 years. Okay, so this is not new to you. But for Susan, this is a very, very new, fresh thing that she's just come into counseling. Okay. So I will continue in that stage of empathizing with her for a while till I know the depth of a problem. Like if you were to come to me for counseling, I would have gone a little bit more into what went wrong and what happened and how do you see it and all of that I would have, because it's a forum like this I didn't. But with Susan, I will get into all of those details and continue staying in that place of understanding what her feeling is. I would continue that. There wouldn't be any conversation about whether she should end the marriage or not, none of that. Because you have to stay in that place for a while for them to come to that place of exploring, because that's what you're doing. You're exploring the problem alongside with Susan so that she's also able to understand it better.
Exploring as good as, making the other person to open up more.
Exactly. So that they know it's like this. You get into a dark cave. What does exploring mean? You're looking around to find what all there are. That's what you're helping doing with the counseling. All right? Okay. Now, how does the counselor begin this process? It is what we call by entering into the frame of reference of the counseling. Okay, now this is an important word. What does this frame of reference mean? This frame of reference is to see like how they are seeing the world. To be able to experience what they have experienced. All right, I'm going to show you another picture that probably will help better. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so think of it this way. Now, you as a counselor has come from a certain culture. Like, for example, I'm a Malayali. And in my culture, there are certain things, certain beliefs, certain ways of working that is very unique to me. All right? I have come from a certain environment, my family environment, how I grew up, all of that makes my frame of reference. Okay? My education, my experience, my expectations, all of this is what creates my frame of reference. Now, similarly, like me, suppose Vimal is going to come to me. Vimal has his own frame of reference. The culture he comes from and I come from are very different. Right? The experiences he's had and I've had are very different. The expectations he has about life is very different from mine. Yes? Now, how can I as a counselor enter into his frame of reference? I have to leave my frame of reference and move out and get into his. Now, I can't do that physically, but I do that by this conversation, this EUA, this exploration, understanding, and action. All right? So, let's look at what does this mean, this frame of reference. Now, if you look at the slides earlier, okay, what is this? There is something called as an external, there are two kinds of frame of reference. An external frame of reference. What's an external frame of reference? Is what you see of me. What do you see of me? No, I'm talking about just you and me. What do you see of me as a person? Okay, you see me experienced, soft, thank you. Okay, soft-spoken. Now, okay, you can say no problem. What else would you see? Christ-like, full of wisdom. My gosh. Okay, so this is your view of me. Yes, right? That's an external frame of reference. Now, this doesn't have to be my view of me. I may not think I'm full of wisdom and soft-spoken and all the lovely things you've said of me. That's what is the internal view of me. My view of myself is the internal view of me. So similarly, if I were to say something about, let's say, I'll say about Vimal, right? He's a very quiet boy. See, immediately there are certain comments that are coming, right? Or he's a well-spoken, well-behaved, very committed. Now, this is my view of Vimal. That's external view. But Maybe Vimal may have a very different opposite view of himself. You get that difference? External view and an internal view. So what does it mean to come to the frame of reference is to say, Vimal, as I'm talking to you, I understand you like you understand yourself. I understand your view of you. So I am taking away all the things I think of Vimal, that he's committed or he's quiet or he is whatever I said. I've moved away and I'm going to go into his space to see what he thinks of himself. That's what that frame of reference is, that I understand your view of you. And I've left away my view of you. Got that? Is that clear? I hope, because this, you need to understand this if we need to keep moving on. So counseling is moving into the frame of reference, which means I'm trying to understand Vimal from what culture he came from. So when I'm talking about his family, I'm just not picking up information, but I'm actually picking up some key things he's telling me about his culture. Or I'm asking him about his education. I'm hearing that, okay, he's passed his degree and, you know, what it has been like for him in college. I'm actually entering it there to see. I'm going into his experiences. Maybe he had 1 or 2 experiences. I'm getting into that experience as if I was part of that experience. That's what moving into the frame of reference of a person looks like. Okay? So that's what this frame of reference means. So, okay. Now, for us to understand that, let's look at some of the responses that you gave Susan. Okay, so one of the response that we gave Susan is, why do you quarrel like that? You must be patient with him and love him. So whose frame of reference did I say this from? Whose frame of reference? Why do you quarrel like that, Susan? You must be patient with him and love him. Whose frame of reference? My frame of reference.
My own.
Right? Which means that it was not at all helpful for Susan. Because I am telling her, you should not quarrel, you should be patient. But I have not entered into her frame of reference. So it becomes a very unhelpful, irrelevant response. Got that? Okay. Now, when does it become relevant is when I respond using and pinpointing a certain feeling and a reason for that feeling. So what have I said that we said about an effective response? I said, Susan, you are feeling hurt because your husband is disappointed in you. So if you look at that arrow, the counselor is thinking from the way that the counselee is thinking and responding from that. So your response, when you're pinpointing her feeling and the reason for that, what are you doing? You're listening, you're guessing what the feeling is, and you are communicating it. So Susan then will say, yes, absolutely. Like, you know how Akhil said. He said, I asked him, I said, you must feel very hopeless having waited these 3 years. Absolutely. I feel hopeless. I feel there is no need to wait any longer. So what is it doing? He's exploring and understanding that, yeah, I have actually waited and I should move on. And just getting into those feelings helped him to understand that, yes, that's the next step I must take. All right? Okay? So when you are moving into the response of your counseling, you're actually helping them to explore and understand where they are at. All right? So those are the first 2 processes, exploring and understanding. Next one. Okay. Now, how do you, after they have understood, how do you help them to move into the action? Look at the conversation there, right? So the first one was, you feel frustrated because you can't find what it is about you that displeases your husband. So what are you doing here? You're trying to explore with her that she cannot find what it is that displeases her husband. And she's saying, yes, exactly. And this is what the counselor is saying. You want to really find out what it is about you that displeases him, one helpful way may be to explore your personality in relation to him. So that's something that you're getting into explore and come into action, which is, let me look at certain points in my own personality that is causing my husband to be displeased with me. You have actually moved her from that place of just exploring and understanding into saying, okay, let me really look at myself and see what is it that's causing my husband not to relate to me. So you've got to the action point. Okay, and then yes, you go on from there to understand part of that personality. So what you say and how you bring them to that understanding of emotions will get them to think of the action point. So I'm just going to give you some external frame of reference responses, okay, which may not help at all. One, he's your husband after all, right? It's your view of Susan. Or, oh, you poor thing, how are you managing? Again, this is sympathy, okay? It doesn't really lead to an understanding. You let yourself get upset far too quickly. You're really getting upset for nothing. These are all external views, responses. You could change all this by feeling differently. Or I think you are doing the right thing by not letting him step on you like that. So this is all coming from your points of reference, okay? What about internal frame of reference? You seem upset with his behavior. You feel annoyed when he doesn't allow you space. You feel upset, disappointed at the way he treats you. You're worried that if this goes on, your marriage can be in danger. So all of this actually gets her to explore a lot more. Okay? All right? So when you're looking at this frame of reference, it's extremely important to enter into that space of that frame of reference. Okay? All right? We'll close here because there is some more to finish, but I think we have 10 minutes. I'd like to probably take some examples. All right? And I'm going to give you some scenarios. And how can we begin to start this process of exploration? All right, so let's look at some examples and see how we can start that. So here's an example. I'm worried sick, I don't sleep well, and I'm afraid for the kids. We're so short of money, and my husband has started to drink again. Okay, what would you respond to help respond through this person's frame of reference? Come on, put on your thinking caps. Look at what they've said, what she said. I'm worried sick, I don't sleep well, we are short of money, and my husband has started to drink again. What is she going through? What is she feeling? Depressed, okay. Sorry? Afraid, yes. What else? What else could she be feeling? Hopeless, anxious. Sorry?
Lack of finances.
No, what is she feeling? Lack of finances is the situation she's going through. What is she feeling? No hope. Yes, hopeless. Helpless. Very good. Okay. So these are things you've picked up. Now, how will you communicate this?
You can say, I can see you are feeling like this.
Okay. All right. So very simple. You seem to be feeling hopeless, helpless, anxious, worried, fearful. You have 2 children. And now since your husband's drinking again, it's probably getting very difficult for you, isn't it? She'll go on, she'll say, yes, my husband doesn't have a job. You know, this is all that he does. It's so annoying. So then you go on to say, I'm sure this is really frustrating for you. What does this mean to you? I don't know what's going to happen to my children. So what are you doing through this? She's exploring all her worries. She's actually bringing it out, right? So I'm just going to take it so that you get to understand a little bit. I'm worried for my kids. My kids are 10 and 5. Look at the kind of influence that my husband has on them. So you've got to another level, right? She's worried about the influence of the children. It's no more, not that it's no more about finances. That's one part. You're getting deeper. You're worried about how the kind of father figure that your children have. Does that concern you? Yes, absolutely. When they grow up tomorrow, what are they going to be like? How are they going to live? What kind of a model are we bringing up? So do you see that she's actually from where she came to where she is slowly getting into, right? So she's understanding a lot about what she's going through. So maybe I come up to a place of saying, there are so many of these concerns that you have. If there was one thing that you would want to see changed, what would that be? I need to really, find a way to keep my children safe from this influence. Maybe she says that. So what have you got? She's begun to see that there is something she wants to do, which is protect her children from this environment. Right? Are you all able to see it? Or only am I seeing it? Yeah? So that's what I mean by moving from that place of exploration to a place of understanding. You've started one action point. That maybe that she wants to ensure that this influence is difficult for her children because maybe her children are going through whatever. This is a made up one, okay? And I'm really doing it really quickly just for you all to understand. So that's what you are trying to do. And this doesn't happen in 2 minutes, by the way. This happens maybe sometimes over sessions, or it can happen in the first session. It really depends, depending on where the person is and how you are taking those conversations. But in general, this is the trajectory of how you move them from a place of exploration to a place of understanding to moving into action. Okay, let's look at another example. I hate it when the other boys tease me. Don't they realize I have feelings too? Hurt. Okay, there is hurt. Anger. Maybe even bitterness. Hate, he said hate, right? Okay, so I may bring about something like, you're absolutely livid, you're absolutely angry that other children treat you like this, right? So he may say, yes, you know what they did yesterday? Blah, 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 blah. She may give me an entire thing. It's good that I listen because I have something that he is saying, right, through that information. So let's say he said something, okay, and then I said, yeah, you look very upset because they don't treat you like one among them. They treat you like a kid, or they treat you like someone not part of their group. Is that so? Yes, they do. So there's a lot more that he is trying to understand through just those questions. And then he may tell you another example where you're able to pick up something else that he may be going through. So the understanding is slowly opening up, right? So maybe I come up to a place, okay, with all that's happened, with all that you're going through, with the pain that you're going through, with not feeling as part of their group, by feeling that they're treating you like a little child. If there was one thing that you wanted to do to make them see you differently, what would that one thing be? So I've got to that place of getting into, he'll say, I want to speak up to them and tell them that they should respect me. So you see, he's got to an action point, right? To begin to solve his problem, he's come up to a place of action point. But that can happen only if I'm able to empathize and stick with what he's going through, so that he can finally reach that place of thinking, okay, if this is the way that I feel that they treat me, then maybe there's something that I must do to let them know that this is how they're disrespecting me. So you've got to a place of action. Okay? All right.
Counselor, would you at that point of time would you still continue to explore a little more?
Yes.
Okay, you wouldn't.
I wouldn't stop it like this. I'm just giving you all a scenario of how it should move to an action point, right? Definitely, there's a lot more to explore through this. And it's like this, like you get into a cave, you are throwing light at one part of the crevice little by little by little to give them see a whole picture. And then you move them to that place. Okay, we've seen all of this. From here, what is our next step? If you wanted to do one thing, what would you do to ensure your situation's better? That's what you're trying to do.
Last question, ma'am. Like as a counselor, when you have a counselor who's come with you to about a lot of problems, and after a period of time you haven't heard from that counselor at all.
Okay.
So as a counselor, would you just try to reach out and?
Yes, I would. Just say, how are you doing? Haven't heard from you in a long while. Just wanted to know how you're doing. They may say, hey, I'm fine. I'll leave it. Or, yeah, I've not been doing too well. So I may say, you sound as if you're not doing too good. Is there something that you'd like to talk about? They'll say maybe no, or maybe later. Yes, I will. Okay? All right. Shall we just please close with a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for these intense discussions, even as we try to understand how to move conversations. Lord, Holy Spirit, we pray for your guidance, for your discernment, for your wisdom as we deal with people. Lord, people are yours, they're your children, and maybe treat them with the love, maybe treat them with the empathy that they deserve, so that they can move from the place of pain to a place of hope and to a place of freedom. Give us, Lord, that desire and equip us to do so. I bless each one of us on the call. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. God bless. Thank you. See you all next week.